Hello and welcome to Logistically Speaking, the weekly podcast where we bring together some of the most interesting thought leaders in the world of logistics and supply chain management to discuss current events, insights, as well as best practices. Logistically Speaking is brought to you by Bring, the enterprise-class last-mile logistics platform. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. This is episode 4 of Logistically Speaking. We have a really special guest today with great experience in the field, and I'm really excited to hear his insights. We're gonna talk about some stuff having to do with e-commerce and supply chain and how it's affected, but how e-commerce has affected supply chain. But just to kind of give an overview of the podcast, since we're still kind of early on in the process, the goal of this podcast is really to give you guys value, to create a community around it, create discussion about supply chain and logistics and how it's kind of changing and the ways we need to kind of adapt to keep up. And so, that's the goal. We actually created a LinkedIn discussion group around the podcast where everyone can kind of talk. It's called Logistically Speaking. So if you guys get a chance, go onto LinkedIn and search that group and join this discussion. Okay, so today's guest is Chuck Intrieri. I'm going to let him give you his background because he's got quite the resume and quite the impressive resume. And then, we'll get his spiel and then we'll get into the topic. And I'm really excited for that. So Chuck, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. And hello to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. But my name's Chuck Intrieri, and my background began with the Schwinn Bicycle Company in Chicago, where we made anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million bikes a year. At one point, we were sold out, and they sent me to overseas to create a Schwinn-approved bicycle to add to our production, 300,000 units. It was the finest company I ever worked with. It's been sold like a lot of other companies, and we were collaborators. We worked with our suppliers in the spirit of cooperation. It was an above-board, cohesive company, a team. 0 defects, our quality the best. Our frame had 100% warranty for its life. It was the best company you can imagine. Anyway, I moved on from there after they left to General Binding Corporation, made shredding, binding equipment, plastics for the side of a notebook. And that was interesting manufacturing. I became the ERP manager there, helped them with some of their subsidiaries to be profitable. Then I moved upstate New York and worked with Troy-built rototillers. Troy-built rototillers, you go into a farm or your own garden, rototill your dirt and then put seeds in and rototill, and then your garden grows. It was quite an instrument. We had horse rototillers, pony rototillers, smaller rototillers, and we sold trucks and we sold, just general farm equipment, and that was a great experience for me, going from bicycles to shredding equipment to that. And then I worked for a company a short time, Jovan Cosmetics, Musk. So I've been in all kinds of industry and learned one thing. If you know your principles of doing business, you can try and do any company as long as you adapt to the product once you get there. And that's not really been an issue with me. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed it very much. That's my background in manufacturing and distribution. Third-party logistics, those things like that, I learned as well.
Right, and so that spans a long time, and so you've had the unique opportunity to watch how things have changed over the time, especially with the digital age and how that's impacting everything. So I'm sure you have a very kind of unique view of how things are changing, and would love to hear your insights, and especially with e-commerce, how e-commerce has impacted the supply chain. How you've seen that happen over time and where you think it's going. I'd love to hear kind of your experience in watching that evolution and where you see it's going in the future.
Well, it all started with purchasing. That was a big name when I was with Schwinn. It was called the purchasing department. Then it became the materials department at Schwinn. Then supply chain came about after I left, believe it or not. So it was just purchasing, materials management, and then I went to Troy-built in upstate New York, and I was director of materials management, which means I had everything from the manufacturer supplier all the way through to manufacturing. However, my duty did not go all the way out to the consumer. Today, the supply chain goes from the manufacturer supplier all the way through the supply chain manufacturing, warehousing, 3PL, e-commerce, whatever it takes to get to value to the customer. Chain is really, in my opinion, not technical. Don't ever forget the fact that people are important. People that are in the supplier, the manufacturer, the company, the distribution, the third-party logistics, the truck driver, everything that has to do with people. Yeah, you need IT systems, you need collaboration, you need all those other things, but I don't care whether robotics comes out, and it is now, or Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, AI, they're talking about artificial intelligence. You're still going to need people, and that's one thing I never want to forget. Going on from there, e-commerce came around to help people with cost efficiency by streamlining document handling. Operating costs are improved, lower operating costs. There's also something called omni-channel. I like to get that out of the way. The difference between e-commerce, which is commercial transaction conducted electronically on the internet, versus omni-channel, which is also internet, but that's omni means many or all. So you talk about omni, it's retail stores, online stores, mobile app stores, telephone, and any other method of transaction done by the internet. So that's omni-channel, that's all channels, versus e-commerce, which has to do with document handling. There's also another issue involved with document handling called electronic data interface, EDI. So those are three different things: omni-channel, e-commerce, and supply chain, and EDI. They do pretty much the same thing, except EDI is documents, and you're able to transact via the internet, and also e-commerce. E-commerce cost efficiency is the most important aspect, and you get into the distribution system flexibility. You have increased complex movement of products. Customers can manage increased complex movement of products and information through the supply chain using e-commerce. Customer orientation is very important. I call it VOC, voice of the customer. You listen to what your customer has to say with customer orientation in e-commerce. Voice of the customer, voice of the employee, where you have a vital link in the support of logistics and transportation services for both internal and external customers. E-commerce will help companies deliver better services. And I'm a big believer in e-commerce helping companies do a better job. However, there's one thing you may not know, that when clients meet a new e-commerce company and they're going to be buying from them, for instance, or press a button to buy something, you got to be leery of them. You got to be careful who you're dealing with. And I suggest you do due diligence on a new e-commerce company. And one of the other things you may not know is if you have a purchase order or a website or an invoice and you work with an e-commerce company, you should have what's called terms and conditions. It's boilerplate language. And make sure that when you're dealing with an e-commerce company, they have terms and conditions, and read them thoroughly. It's called fine print. Read it, make sure that you agree with it, and that you have your own. So if there's an issue, a legal issue, you can have what's called a battle of the forms. But at least you're covered and they're covered. So think about terms and conditions, if you will. That's something I'd like to add here today. The shipment tracking is part of e-commerce, and I think customers today, it's very important to them that they're able to track their freight. Every transportation you want to go to, even containers coming from overseas, they want to be able to track freight. It's the same with e-commerce. You want to be able to have shipment tracking. You want to have shipping notices so that you automate your receiving process. You get your shipping notices in advance before product is received.
I've been reading about and writing about lately. It really seems that, e-commerce, the digital age, has really put more power in the hands of the consumer. There's so many
Yes.
options. There's so much more opportunity to do your research. It used to be that, Adam had a really nice quote about Ford. Let's see if I can remember that. You can get Ford in any color as long as it's black, or something like that, where it's, the company really dictated what the consumer was going to get. And there was very little choice and opportunity to research. And it seems that, because anyone can open an e-commerce store in their living room and sell stuff without necessarily going into big box stores. There's, the consumer has so much more choices that it's putting pressure on some of the bigger players to provide a better service. So it's really kind of pushing online retailers, e-commerce, to provide a better product, a better experience. And, like you talked about, kind of like that last mile experience where the consumer knows, where their package is, when it's coming. And so they don't, they don't have to wait kind of blind to when that's going to happen. And it seems to me, and I'd love to hear your insight, that those are all things that have kind of come about with the digital age. And I think e-commerce has had an impact on that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I believe you. And as I said, the only thing people don't do is voice of the customer, listen to your customer. And I agree with you there, Mark. Listen to your customers, listen to your employees. There's one thing that you're close to bringing up, and you did really. There's risks in dealing with e-commerce. What are those risks? I mentioned one, trust is a risk. Do not trust to conduct business with a newly introduced company. Do your due diligence. Study them. There's another risk is called internet connectivity. You got to watch for failure of the internet. And if there's failure, you know what happens. You lose everything. You don't see or understand or get activity in e-commerce if the internet fails. Mm-hmm. So that's why you have to have something called force majeure in your terms and conditions that covers you in case of an act of God, an act that's out of our control. I keep pushing terms and conditions because people don't understand how valuable they are. And I'm with Cal Poly here in San Luis Obispo, and I'm going to Irvine to speak about that very thing for all the small business development consultants in California to understand why terms and conditions are so important to your business and company, purchase orders and invoices, the fine print, which people say, I don't have to read that. Be careful with that. You do have to read it, and you do have to have somebody help you read it. But every small business I've gone to, Mark, they don't have terms and conditions. They don't understand. And yet when they put them up, they understand now why they needed them. So that's another risk. And you have to look into risk. Yeah. If you're integrating with that supplier, manufacturer, distributor by reducing time and inventory costs. I mean, there's positives to e-commerce, but there's also risk as well. Just like anything else in life, there's positives and negatives. Another thing I'd like to bring up very quickly is what good is all of this without measuring it? You have to have metrics of some kind or key performance indicators. If you don't do that, you won't know if you're improving. You don't know if you have continuous improvement. You don't know where you're going. Some of the metrics to be looked at are correct invoices, for one, percentage of correct invoices, on-time delivery, damage of goods, equipment availability, and turn down ratio. So if you take a look at those issues, you can then start to measure them with your e-commerce provider. And my opinion is you should always have a service level agreement with any supplier, any third-party logistics service provider, any e-commerce company. Have a service level agreement with key performance indicator that's collaborative and win-win for both you and the supplier, the e-commerce company, the 3PL company, whomever. That helps you then measure and have metrics.
You mentioned 3PLs, and what's interesting to me is, and I'm seeing this a little bit with the advent of Amazon and Cyber Monday and things like that. Do you think that online retail is putting more pressure on 3PLs and making it more difficult for them to prepare and deliver on time. For example, Christmas Day when places like Amazon or other online retailers get inundated, it seems that even if some of the 3PLs prepare, they hire more people, they open more offices in preparation for that, it still seems like sometimes they struggle to understand what the demand is going to be on those peak times of year. Is that something that you see happening, and do you think that there's some sort of solution that they're going to come up with to deal with that?
Yeah, it's called instant gratification. In my day, you waited and you went to the brick and mortar store and you got your clothes and you paid for them in cash. This world is altogether different. You don't go to stores, you don't pay in cash. You use a credit card and you go through an e-commerce and you press a button and you get your goods. And you know very well, Mark, we're talking about drones. That's where you're going. Drones are going to be all over the place. They're going to be even at Cal Poly, I have startup companies working with the different types of drones they're going to create as a startup company. So let's face it, it's an instant gratification age. Everybody wants things at once. Do I understand that? No, not where I came from many years ago, but it's here. That's what people want today. And it's the customer that's speaking. They're going to go where they get that service. Right. So yes, 3PLs are affected. Distribution houses are affected. Look what Amazon's doing. Right. They're leading the way in drones and immediate. They can even go to your trunk with a drone, with an operation, open your trunk, put the package in, close it and lock it and leave. Come on. I mean, instant gratification. Yes, you're right.
And I think that also speaks to what we mentioned earlier about how the consumers, having more power today, where it's pushing companies to offer that kind of service because, one of my insights that I see, especially kind of maneuvering through the startup world is the major asset today for consumers and millennials in particular is time. Time is the major asset. It's like it's worth, even people are willing to pay more for Uber because it's so simple. It's that asset of time. And so being able to get something, so quickly on demand, for example, or the same day has immense value to consumers today. And I think that what's happening is people are starting to expect that it's no longer something special. It's a given that, they're going to get their package when they want it. They're going to press a button online. It's going to get to their door exactly when they want it. And then when it doesn't, there's a big backlash.
Yes. And 3PLs are getting more and more pressure. So therefore, I go back to the statement about having a service level agreement and making sure you have all your KPIs or metrics in there that are being measured so that you and your partner, the 3PL, work together to meet the standards of today, which are changing constantly. And then every month or quarter, you change your KPIs, you change your service level agreement to reflect reality. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my specialties is 3PL. I help companies find the optimum 3PL and take them through everything so that they're happy with their new partner. That's the way it is today because people are going that route as you brought it up. And yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm. Dealing overseas when you have a typhoon coming to Taiwan. If you look at Taiwan lately, they've had 2 or 3 huge typhoons, and I've had containers for my startups over there that got caught in my startups. What do we do now, Chuck? Well, do you have force majeure in your terms and conditions? No. Do you have cargo insurance? No. Well, can't do much now, but next time you better. So, you learn by your experience.
You consult with it was one of the things you were telling me before we started, that you consult with startups now and help them with a lot of things. So is that the kind of thing that you push home is these terms and conditions and making sure that they're prepared for, issues that may arise, such as getting cargo stuck in Taiwan during a typhoon?
Yes, I do. I am an import export specialist because Schwinn, that's what I did. I imported all the parts that weren't made in this country back then from all of Europe and all of Asia to bring them into Chicago for assembly through the Great Lakes or New York or the West Coast. And I did all that as well as being in charge of the inventory. So I was really back then a supply chain manager, but they didn't call me that. They called me a purchasing agent or purchasing manager. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I learned that I can help young people with importation, customs, brokers, customs, supply chain, duty, and how you work with overseas suppliers, cultural aspects. Yeah, I help all of them. I mean, it takes a long time to build a startup company from nothing to being in business.
Right. That's an interesting topic, and kind of veering off completely what our initial topic was.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
What do you think of the of Brexit and how would it affect things like that? There's obviously going to change the way goods are shipped through Europe and UK. I don't know if you have any insights there, but it kind of seems like things are up in the air now. No one really knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. It is causing any change like that causes difficulty. So it takes time to adjust to change. I think it will affect supply chains over there. We had our Brexit here in this country when we were independent, became independent of England. So we weren't as advanced as we are today, but that was our Brexit here. And companies and countries have it, and they just call it different things. But yeah, you have to adjust to that change. It's a new culture, a new way of doing business. And, England is now, Britain is now independent, and how they're going to deal with that. Some are happy, some aren't.
Right.
And yeah, it's going to mean a change to supply chains and how they interact with other countries. Culture is so critical when it comes to supply chains, and young people today don't understand that. Why don't they understand what I'm saying? Why are they being so? I said, do you realize they're not Americans? Oh yeah, maybe that's it.
Right.
Maybe culture is a big part of importing and exporting, dealing overseas, and sometimes it's impossible. They just don't. And we're not always right, by the way. We have our culture, they'll have theirs. So it's like terms and conditions is a battle of the forms, battle of language.
Right.
So I have to help them with that.
That's interesting. I mean, if you have a terms and conditions about your shipping or your provider, and they're located in China, and your terms and conditions are based on U.S. law, I mean, how does that work? You
have to be careful with the court you choose in your terms and conditions. Is it going to be the court in Taiwan, or is it going to be the court here in the United States? So if you buy, you're getting into Incoterms now. If you buy FOB Taiwan, you have to probably go by their court. If you go FOB laid down, which is cost, insurance, and freight, called CIF, then you can use the American court. So you got to take Incoterms into consideration. I don't know if you know what I mean by FOB, free on board, on your purchase order. It says FOB. That's very critical, and I had to teach my young people not to leave that blank, but you put in X works, you pay for everything from the minute it leaves their factory in Taiwan, or you pay CIF. Paying CIF, cost, insurance, freight, is called laid down here. A lot of people don't understand Incoterms. A lot of people don't understand the effect of terms and conditions. That's why I'm bringing it up in e-commerce. A lot of people don't understand a lot of things about the supply chain. They don't understand how to work with U.S. Customs, how to work with FDA and Homeland Security. Do you know they scan containers when they hit the dock? My young people didn't know they scan. Now we wait a whole week to be in queue for scanning. And then we have to pay our duty, and they're learning as we go. I knew in advance. You can tell somebody, but they don't understand it till they see it and live it. Okay? That's why I'm happy with my life, because I've seen it and lived it and can share it with people. Wait, this is going to happen. Either they listen or don't listen.
Right.
If they don't listen, they're going to learn the hard way. So what am I going to do? I don't know everything, but when I do, I try to tell people, look out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that, the insights you gave us are pretty great, and I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to speak with us. And I think that this is a great addition to the podcast. We've gotten a lot of different insights from different people in the space. So I'm really, really excited. I'm really happy that you took the time to speak with us today, Chuck.
Thank you for your time, and the audience. Good luck to you today, and have a great weekend, and good luck in your business or whatever you're doing. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, very much.